I wish I'd gotten that comment on tape, but I'm assuming it will come up again.
I'm not going to say it again because there's copyright on it, so...
Yeah. Well, granted, if John Oliver was going to go through and copyright all our shit, half our podcast would be just gone.
Oops. Okay.
Yeah, but also, if the Vidiots ever claim propriety on their format and phrases, we'd be gone in an instant.
Yeah,
We'd have to keep everything under wraps.
I don't think they'd ever do that.
I don't think they would either, but I do keep everything under wraps, Reed.
To do that.
More out of embarrassment than anything else, because it's kind of hard to tell, it's kind of hard to tell, a video store clerk, hey, I copied your podcast almost verbatim with my friends.
We do the same segment to open our show and everything.
Maybe we should get a new formula when we start the next volume. I don't know.
But I
have had the idea of sort of like Vinesauce style. We'll have the podcast and we'll upload that to but then I go in and take some of the bits, put visuals to them and upload them separately.
Please no memes. Please no memes.
No, I'm not going to go full Vinesauce and just have garbage memes everywhere. I'd just actually show the clips of movies we're talking about. Something like that. I thought of it, and it's something we could do.
That is a lot of work that I'm not prepared to do.
Oh, I do that. You already do the podcast. You already edit the podcast. I would be the one who goes in and runs. I would probably it'd be almost at random because there's 90 minutes worth of content in each of these fucking things.
Yeah. Well, Reed, we could switch up the format of the show, but I like talking about what we've been watching.
Yeah. I think it's a great. I think it's probably. Some could argue it's the best part of the show.
Well, it's certainly longer than, the parts where we actually talk about the movies we're supposed to talk about sometimes.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it happens with the Vidiots, too, so...
Yeah, well, last week when we did Mike Lee, we talked about Mike Lee's movies for, a half hour, and we talked about what we've been watching for, 45 minutes.
Well, one of those things just happened to be The Social Network, and it needed all the time we could give it.
Yes, plus an extra hour-long bonus episode, which, hey, check that out. Welcome back to the Hack Fraud Show. Remember when we were going to change the title? Maybe?
Yeah. I think we sort of...
Let's not.
You're in love with the Hack Fraud Show, because I had the idea of the name Opinions at 24 frames per second.
It's a little unwieldy.
I mean, that is a Hack Fraud Show.
That's the issue with that. That phrase was stolen from another video review site. So I feel like if that's another thing that if they got us for copyright, we'd be done.
Anyway, so this is the Hack Fraud Show for now. And this week we are talking about the Three Colors trilogy, a beloved series of European art house films, venturing further into the rabbit hole that is our summer of international film. I'm very excited to talk about these movies.
Rabbit hole.
Yeah. But
it's like Alice in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll style rabbit hole.
Yeah.
That's quite accurate.
Quite.
Keep them.
Anyway, we've got 3 movies to talk about today, and I'm very excited about it because I enjoy these movies quite a bit.
I as well.
But first, the age-old question, what have we been watching?
Well, I watched, at one point I was bored and had 2 hours, and I said, what are some other famous films that Powell and Pressburger did? And actually, this one I'm pretty sure is only Michael Powell, but it's The 49th Parallel. A film that starts off with, you think it's going to be a submarine movie at first, because it starts off with on a German U-boat, and everyone's running around, and they sink a British shipping vessel, and it's all about that. And then they go into Hudson Bay in Canada to strike something, and they are immediately blown up. And then the movie becomes about the survivors of that wreck, as they trek across Canada to try and make it to the United States, because this was a moment where the United States wasn't in the war yet. So it was kind of it was neutral territory that they had to get to. And what the movie turns into is sort of Michael Powell's musings on fascism as, like, the Nazis, like, get to, like, different parts of rural and urban Canada and talk to Canadians about, like, the differences between their two systems. And lots of people get murdered. And at one point, art is burned.
Oh,
and
what
it's
fun.
absolutely fucking delightful. Like, there's, like, at one point, like, they go to, it's kind of like a Canadian farming commune run by German immigrants. And, like, there's, like, this fascinating scene where, like, the head sort of, like, Nazi U-boat man gives, like, this speech to, like, all, like, this massive communal lunch. And he starts, like, breaking down, like, sort of, like, Nazi ideology as, like, something like, we are brothers, we must spread the Aryan race, and so forth. This is also another movie that's really blunt about the Nazis, which is strange for a wartime movie.
Yeah.
Then there's, like, this, like, Alton Valbrook is in this one. He's not in it all that long, but, like, he gives, like, this show-stopping speech about the wrongs of fascism. And it's really arresting. That's the thing about, like, it starts off, it's a slice of life, roaming, not really comedy, but just sort of, like, almost buddy movie, because it just turns into, like, this U-boat crew as, like, kind of, it keeps getting thinned out, because some of them get killed, some of them get arrested, and there's, like, almost like a police chase for them at some point, but yeah, it's a movie that's all about, like, deconstructing fascism. And that's fascinating. And it's lovely to watch.
Well, I will see this movie at some point because I'm definitely looking to dig into more Michael Powell and or Emmerich Pressburger movies.
Yeah.
So
it's also the first black and white movie I watched from them, and it looks pretty fucking good. And yeah. I will say that, like, I'm not going to give too many spoilers, but, like, I do enjoy, like, how, like the ending of the movie works with, like, using rule of law to get these people. And that's really fascinating. And there's also, like, the fascinating bit of, like, there's, like, a kind of montage where we cut between, like, the Nazis announcing this sort of these heroic U-boat survivors on the run, and we cut to, like, the CBC announcements of them and how they're criminals and so forth, and that's absolutely fascinating. So, interesting movie. I think y'all should really watch. I think y'all would really enjoy it. And it's also somewhat funny at times.
Well, I will definitely be looking into that at some point.
But regardless, what else did I watch? Do you want to talk about Baby Driver?
Yes, let's talk about Baby Driver.
Let's talk about Baby Driver. Okay, yeah.
Has having Garfunkel music in it.
Just
what?
At the end.
Yeah. Oh, is there at the end?
Yeah, they play that song at the end. The baby.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay. I guess I missed that. Okay. Baby Driver, a kind of quasi musical / dance routine set to a bunch of, like, sort of assorted mix of pop songs, mostly centering around the 1970s.
Well, sort of, yeah. Okay, so this is the new film by Edgar Wright, a filmmaker that I love and that John has a slightly more problematic relationship with. But, yes, this is his new film. It's kind of a quasi-musical, also, like, kind of an homage to kind of old-school car chase movies.
Yeah.
So this centers around a gentleman played by Ansel Elgort, who they call him Baby Driver. His name is Baby. For some reason, I don't know.
There's a lot of songs that say baby in it. That's why he's called Baby.
Whatever. Anyway, okay, so they call him Baby. He is working for master criminal Kevin Spacey as a getaway driver to repay some old debt that he has. He's close to the end of his tenure, but things become complicated, and he falls in love with this girl who's a waitress, and well, okay, so what did you think of the movie, John?
Well, I like it.
Oh, okay.
I do like it. I think it's, like, a cute little, like, stylish romp with, like, some really nice filmmaking that's about 30 minutes too long and is a bit of a mess in places.
I do not disagree with you. I think this is, first of all, this is the least Edgar Wright movie that I've ever seen.
Yeah, it is, like, it's barely a comedy.
Yeah,
like,
well,
barely.
That's interesting because I think that's on purpose. Like he's moving into a different mode. He's trying some new things, and that's good. That's good to see him kind of punching at the borders of his comfort zone.
That's kind of one thing I liked about it.
The issue is, I don't know. I feel like it was just missing that spark, that energy that I see in all of his other movies.
I think I will say this: like Kevin Spacey isn't in it nearly as much as he should be. Like his death is just kind of like really inconsequential. Like I said, it's 30 minutes too long. Like you just need to cut something. Just something like we just need to get to the point more. Especially this is like a really simple movie, and I like how it's simple and like really like to the point at times. But like I think you just need to like cut a few scenes out and just run with it. Like I do really like the filmmaking. I do kind of like how like instead of like meet cute dialogue, we have meet cute musical number, or like touching wine glasses and like are dancing in a laundromat that only has primary colored clothes in it.
Yeah.
And like the movie looks gorgeous.
Yes, there is a lot of like exuberance to this movie. The car chase scenes are great. They're all beautifully synced to music. He's great at that. Apparently, Edgar Wright is just moving closer and closer to making an actual musical film, and I'd be very okay with that.
I'd be alright with that.
I don't know. I just think there was just something I just felt like missing a little bit. I don't know whether this is. I kind of attribute this to like him maybe missing Simon Pegg a little bit in the writing of it all. Maybe that's it. I don't really know, but I just felt like I'm going to rewatch like all his previous movies like until I die. This one, I'm really not sure how often I'll rewatch it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's sort of like there's some like great little moments in there, but like some of the characters they're not quite sure what to do with, like with Kevin Spacey or the wonderful deaf man who he lives with.
Yes.
And let's see. I guess one of my issues with this movie is that like you have the thing where it's like we're gonna have like action scenes and things like that set the music, but like and you feel like there should be like this really ramping up of that as like it's like more and more not ridiculous but more heightened and more over the top.
Yeah,
that kind of doesn't happen.
Right,
it just kind of goes harder on the gels at the end. I mean, it's kind of arresting at first, but after a while you're kind of like, been here.
Yeah, I don't know. I do feel like the climax like does maybe go on a little too long. Like you keep getting to the point where you think like, okay, this is it. This is like the ultimate climax.
Like, oh boy, we're here.
And then it just keeps going. And I don't know about that. I will say I did like the ending of the movie mainly because my main problem with Edgar Wright's endings in the past has been that they all feel like very abrupt, and to have one that is actually like too drawn out is kind of a nice change of pace.
And it's kind of like a nice like, oh, he actually goes to prison.
Yeah. Anyway, I do like this movie. It's just, I don't know, it's perfectly enjoyable. It's like a really fun summer movie. I just felt a little bit of the just kind of spark and vitality of his previous movies was maybe a little bit lacking.
I'm not quite as down on it. It's a fun romp that looks beautiful with some nice, cute little moments and some wonderful little details. So I think it's kind of a great little summer movie.
Yeah, no, it's a great little summer movie. I've just come to expect a little more from Edgar Wright is all.
Yeah, and I don't, so maybe that's why I'm not quite as down on it.
I'm sure that has something to do with it.
He is the best of the like Seth Rogen, Adam Sandler style man-child comedy that has come to plague Hollywood. He's the best of those.
I just think there's so much more to his movies than that, but we don't need to relitigate that. We already did a whole episode of this.
Regardless, but great visual style. I'll give him that.
Dr. Reed, have you been watching anything?
I don't want to bore you with Vice documentary videos that I've been watching, so for the sake of argument, no. Plus, they're very outdated.
There's one thing I watched that, like, I don't know whether we were going to have anything to talk about just by because of just the nature of it. Because before we watched Baby Driver, Matthew had seen something. He said, "This is the most absurd thing you'd ever seen. I need to show you it." So he showed me it. It's Cartoon All-Stars to the rescue. which was a 1990 drug PSA starring a bunch of like cartoon characters from like the Looney Tunes to Winnie the Pooh, the teenager. It's just all these things in one, and it is just the most absurd thing one could ever conjure.
Well, they say Who Framed Roger Rabbit is the best instance of Warner Brothers and Disney characters appearing on screen together, but
yeah, it's wow. This movie has like Kermit the Frog says crack. There's the wonderful line,
Hey, I think I know what you're talking about, actually.
Yeah, I think Bugs Bunny picks up a joint and says, "What is this? A joint?" And it is every bit as absurd and terrible as you get. And oh yeah, the like prologue of this movie is literally like George H.W. Bush at the White House talking to you, introducing the film.
Oh yeah, doesn't he have like a thing of like crack cocaine in his hands?
No, I think that's another thing.
Okay.
I think that's another thing, but this is just as absurd.
Holy shit. Like, this was an official thing. Holy shit.
Yeah, this is an official thing that, like, Alan Menken did a song, which is terrible. Frank Welker's in it. Like, it is just, I don't know what to make of it.
Good lord. Well, thanks for bringing that up.
I mean, it is just something so absurd that, like, I had to, like, share it with people other than Matthew.
Good lord. All right, well, I'm not sure how to follow this, but I guess I'll do my best.
What have you been watching, Tyler?
All right, this week I watched a couple of Japanese films, as I am wont to do. I watched, let me make sure I get this right, Yasujiro Ozu's Good Morning, which I believe you've seen.
I think I have seen that one.
Yes, so this is the movie that was 1959, I believe, Technicolor kind of comedy, centers around two young Japanese boys who are pressuring their parents to buy a TV set, and the parents don't want to. And the boys really want to watch sumo wrestling, so they undertake a vow of silence on all adults. And
there's also like a cool couple that they go to their house to watch TV.
Yes. Very entertaining movie. I will say the parts in the earlier bits of the movie where it kind of centers all around like the neighborhood housewives like gossiping. That, to me, was a little less interesting, but, like, once the boys undertake their vow of silence, the movie really starts cooking with gas. Pun not intended, but there is a lot of fart-related humor in this movie.
Yes, and this movie is adorable.
It is adorable. You have a little Japanese boy who's, like, constantly bouncing around saying, "I love you!"
And, like, they, like, throw around, like, a pseudoscience term, like, oh, yeah, 2 million idiots. That's what the TV's gonna do.
Yeah, and the boys are eating, like, ground-up pumice stone to try and control their farts or something. There's a wonderful recurring gag with a kid who shits his pants constantly. all shot very tastefully, by the way, I must add.
All in, like, wonderful Technicolor, like, wides of beautiful, beautiful little suburban Japan.
It's a beautiful movie. Ozu, I think, is kind of known for his meticulously composed shots, and this movie has them in spades.
And his use of Technicolor.
Yes. So, great movie. I would highly recommend Good Morning.
Oh yeah, I love Good Morning.
I'm also kind of curious to see, because apparently it was based on a silent film of his called I Was Born But, and I'd be kind of curious to see that. Slight reworking of that. I also watched another movie by our old friend Seijun Suzuki. This movie was 1963's Youth of the Beast.
Great title.
Great title, as always. Starring star of Branded to Kill Joe Shishido, although this movie was made first. And it, as you would expect from Seijun Suzuki, it is batshit bonkers.
That's all I needed to hear.
It is a little more straightforward than Branded to Kill and Tokyo Drifter. I feel like as you work your way like forwards in his filmography, the movies just get crazier and crazier.
Over the top.
Yeah. So this one is a little bit more straightforward. Apparently, it kind of marked a transition for him when he kind of moved into like the style of Branded to Kill and Tokyo Drifter, because this one very much feels of a piece with those movies. So this movie kind of centers around Joe Shishido as God, what is the character's name? I don't know. The character's name is also Joe, so it doesn't really matter. Anyway, Joe is a former police officer posing as a Yakuza hitman to play the two rival Yakuza gangs against each other to try and avenge his dead buddy. And it is wild, it is crazy, it is very entertaining, and definitely keeps you on your toes, as Suzuki's movies are wont to do.
Make no money and make no sense.
Yeah, I don't know about the money. It kind of makes sense, but you kind of have to be paying attention.
Okay.
This one is shot in color, and it is gorgeous. Suzuki does production design and cinematography like nobody's business. And
oh yeah, like all of his films are like these like magnificent pieces of art.
Yes, so I highly recommend Youth of the Beast if you're compelled to check it out.
That sounds fascinating. Maybe I'll check it out.
All right.
I'll have to find a day where I want my brain blown out the back of my skull.
You have to be in a very specific mood for that. Let's see.
Yeah.
Okay. So on the emphatic recommendation of our Lord and Savior Darren Franich, I watched the new Netflix original series Glow, which is a fictionalized telling of the production of the real wrestling show, The Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, which was a real thing in the 80s. But like I say, this TV show is a fictionalized retelling of that. Alison Brie stars in it as a struggling to work actress. One of the great, I think I can say this, one of the great like female anti-heroes to grace TV screens so far. She's great. Mark Maron, the comedian Mark Maron, also host of the What the Fuck podcast. He plays the director of the show. He is incredible. He is so hilarious and so charming while also being so like sleazy, and it is lots of fun. And goddamn, this show is like one of the best works of like feminist television that I've ever seen. It is incredible. It's written by women. It's starring a great cast of like 14 women who are all incredible and all like get their moment in the spotlight. And you know, I am not a binge watcher. I you know, when I am like kind of plowing through a show, I'll usually watch like 1 or 2 episodes a day. So like 3 episodes like is like the absolute most I'll usually like watch of a show. Okay. John, a couple days ago when we recorded that bonus episode, I watched 4 episodes of Glow that day. So
how many hours of television? How many hours of television is that?
Well, it's only 2. The episodes are only a half hour, so 4 episodes of Glow is the length of 2 episodes of The Wire, and I've done that before. So I finished the season yesterday, and like I watched the pilot episode, and I was kind of like, well, okay, that was fine. And then I watched the second episode, and I was like, oh, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. And then I watched the third episode, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm finishing this. So I highly recommend Netflix's Glow. It is one of the great works of this new era of television, and I think I can say that. One last thing, I have also been rewatching the Harry Potter films with my roommate, because he had not seen any of them until we started watching them this week.
Which just baffles me.
Yes, it's so strange.
That's almost blasphemy.
It's very strange. I thought like everyone in America had experienced Harry Potter in some form. Clearly I was wrong about that. But anyway, we've rewatched the first 3 so far. Sorcerer's Stone, Chamber of Secrets, Prisoner of Azkaban. I have found that the first 2 movies I think kind of get a bad rap, and believe me, there are aspects of them that have not aged well. The Quidditch matches in the first 2 movies, holy God, they do not look good. The CGI, you can definitely tell the CGI people, and it is appalling. But other aspects of them have aged quite well. I still think the storytelling in them definitely holds up. They're very charming kind of kids movies that I think are still fairly entertaining to watch and fairly interesting. It's interesting to go back and watch them because like the first two movies like separately and like together could just stand on their own. Like you can tell the studio was kind of like hedging their bets, like just in case they decided like not to go all the way with it. Like the way the second one ends, they could have stopped there and had like two fine little fantasy movies.
Yeah. I kind of like that about them.
Yeah, I do too. But like by the end of the third one, you can tell that they're like, okay, we're gonna go all the way with these things. And
I kind of wish they would have, like, I mean, I don't mind that, like, they went into, like, adult teenyville for the rest of them, but, like, I kind of wish, like, some of, like, the sort of, like, the fantasy whimsy sort of made their way into some others. Or it's like, because, like, this is a pretty charming world.
Yeah, it is a charming world. And, you know, it's great to see, also, Chamber of Secrets has a lot more, like, weird, like, Dutch angle stuff than you remember. Like, I was watching that movie and I was like, holy shit, like, Chris Columbus is going batshit insane over here. Not quite like that, but there's a lot of very strange kind of shooting stuff in that movie. Also, Sorcerer's Stone, like, kind of looks and feels, like, oddly Spielbergian at times.
Yeah, because, like, that's the one, like, they play that one on TV all the fucking time, and you'll just catch, like, glimpses of it. I'm like,
Yeah. So that's all good. And then Prisoner of Azkaban we've discussed in detail on the show before. Yeah. I still think the filmmaking in that one is kind of extraordinary, wonderfully exuberant. Alfonso Cuarón is a great filmmaker. The writing of it is really still kind of scattershot, and that is why I don't hold that movie as the best. But I'm kind of using this opportunity to reevaluate them, so we'll see what happens when I get to what I've...
about to go in 4 and 5, that treasure trove.
4 and 5 I have long... Well, I used to like 5, and then I rewatched it last summer and discovered that it is really not good, so I'm a little...
Oh, yeah. Actually, that was the first time I saw 5, all the way through.
Oh, really?
Because I've only seen, like, the first part, and then I'm like, I'm bored. Let me go.
Yeah, and...
You know, Tyler, I might have to do this too at some point, because, like, I haven't seen a lot of these films in a while either. Like, I haven't seen, like, the second one in full in fucking forever.
Yeah.
The same with the first one. I haven't even seen 4 and 5, or the 2-part 7 abomination.
It's not an abomination. 7-part 1 is great. 7-part 1 is great. But
7-part 1 maybe is one of the best.
I would say so.
7-part 1 sounds fascinating, I would say.
But I'm dreading rewatching Goblet of Fire, the 4th one, because that has long been my least favorite, and I am not looking forward to rewatching it. But
you could just go like, hey, I'm going to show you 6 and 7-part 1 first.
No. We're going straight through. It's important. I want him to understand the plot, and
for the sake of cultural edification.
Yes, and I also want to rewatch it and see if I can reevaluate it with any kind of clarity. So I'll probably discuss those next week. But that's what I have been watching, and now the 3 colors.
What an odd segment this week.
Very strange, very strange. But, alright, so the 3 Colors movies, directed by Krzysztof Kieślowski, the renowned Polish filmmaker. I think the original plan with these movies was for Kieślowski to only direct one of them.
Interesting.
And he would kind of hand the other 2 like off to different directors, but that didn't end up happening. But I think each one is shot by a different cinematographer, which is interesting.
It seemed like it, yes.
Yeah, there is kind of like a different look between them.
Yeah. So
not just because they go hard on their respective color schemes.
Yeah. So these films were kind of meant to loosely kind of adapt and represent the French revolutionary ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity.
Yeah, and like it's sort of like, and I kind of want to sort of like as like we go into these, I kind of want to give like because like we live in an era that is like that detaches language so much from its original meaning, and things like freedom, especially equality and like brotherhood. Those are terms like you hear a lot in democracies. And it's often easy like to detach those from their original meanings. So like before we talk about each film, I'm going to at least give a sort of like quasi-Enlightenment-era version of those terms, because I think that's the version of these terms that Kieślowski is going into with a postmodernist eye.
Well, the way each movie like treats its respective kind of theme is very interesting and very kind of strange. But shall we go in order here and start with Blue?
Can I say one thing though?
Yes.
Oh, sure.
Kieślowski has a big fascination in recycling.
That is true. That is true.
Just with old people recycling. It's kind of adorable.
Yeah.
And then
I don't know what that motif means, but it's a motif.
It is a motif.
Yes.
All right.
All right. So
but Blue, we start with liberté.
Yes. All right. Give your Enlightenment speech.
Okay, for the Enlightenment. Okay, liberté, freedom. This sort of, and like this is especially a term like we just throw around so much in like modern democracies, and it's a word that's so often abused. But like I guess like the Enlightenment vision of freedom would be like this idea of like it's like I think therefore I am, like freedom of thought. Like the idea of like there is like an independent thought outside of not only government but society. Mm-hmm. And like you are not restrained by the strictures of government or society in these sort of ways. And it's also like a way of like, because like pre-revolutionary France was very tied up in like a strict caste system. And this also will this will also carry into equality. Like to not be bound to land or your name or like your skin color is something that's like very important with Enlightenment ideals.
All right. Well, yes. All right. So the trilogy kicks off with Blue.
Yes.
1993, I believe.
Yeah, because I think it's 1993, and then I think aren't Red and White both in 1994?
I think White might have also come out in 93, but Red is definitely 94. Anyway, this movie stars Juliette Binoche as Julie. So we kick off the movie with her husband and her daughter dying in a car accident.
Yeah.
And great way to kick off the movie.
Oh yeah, like and shot very arrestingly.
Oh yes, for sure.
Yes.
And it kind of becomes a story about like how she like purges like all like possessions from that like married life.
Yeah.
And, like buys like a Parisian apartment and like goes into like an existential mode of like I am going to do nothing. I'm not going to get a job. I'm just going to stay in this little apartment and not do anything.
Yes.
There's also like a strange relationship with what is it like? It's kind of been a while since I've seen Blue. Is it like a friend of her husband or like
like a friend of her husband's who like is like in love with her?
Might have had probably not, but might have had an affair.
Yeah, it's never quite clear.
Yeah, that's kind of ambiguous.
Although it is made apparent that her husband had a mistress who is having his child, so that's fun. Anyway,
and there's also like a fascinating scene where she goes to the mistress and just has like a nice little conversation with her.
Yeah. All right. So this movie, the way it treats like the idea of liberty is so fascinating because it kind of like looks at it as like this liberty from like responsibility and all like obligations and family and everything. But this is like the kind of liberty that like you're not really sure a person would want or should ever have necessarily, which is so interesting.
That, like, it's kind of like this is I can't quite remember what philosopher this is, like sort of like absolute freedom and how like that's kind of a terrifying thing. You are responsible for all your actions, and how that's not very comforting at times.
Right.
And that's sort of like this is sort of a case like this person is untethered from her name in this case, like the very idea, like the sort of nuclear family, and without that, she's just sort of lost.
Yeah,
she doesn't really know where to go next. She kind of purges her former life, like in a
Yeah.
really fascinating way. Like she doesn't even want to finish her like, because like there's kind of the thing where like we aren't really sure whether like she wrote
Yeah.
her
So
husband's music.
So yeah, her husband was like a renowned composer, and he had been like commissioned to like write a piece for like unified Europe or something, and like yeah, it's kind of unclear. Like a reporter asks her like, "Is it true that you composed your husband's music?" And she like tries to destroy all the copies of the piece, and I will just say I love the use of music in this movie. Like they'll be looking at the score, and like the music will play with like full orchestration and everything, which is so incredible.
And yeah, so well, all of these like this is an interesting idea. I find that like all of these movies have like a very like pan-European view of like this continent. Is that like, and this is an era where like the EU was a new thing, and like the idea of like pan-Europeanism was like a somewhat new idea. And these movies, like especially with White, really tries to analyze that. And so like we have just like, you know, like everyone speaks, and oddly enough, it chooses kind of French as the language of the pan-Europeanism, just through the nature of it. And I think that's just like a really fascinating idea.
Probably what struck me with Blue is the use of music, and especially how drastic it gets. There are certain points where she suddenly becomes deep in thought, and then her husband's score would play over a blackout.
Yeah.
And then light would go back through. Probably the most interesting part, and this made me laugh hard, was she was in the cafe with the boy who found her and her family in the car accident, and then goes to return her necklace. Mm-hmm. And then I think the boy asks, it's like, do you need anything? Like, I'll be there for you. And she's like, no. And then it blacks out the music go up.
That technique is a little strange, but it's kind of it makes for an interesting assemblage. Yeah, it is kind of charming.
There's also like a kind of odd view of like women in this society, where it's like there's like, isn't there like the like pole dancing friend she gets? Which is I don't quite know what to make of it. Yeah, but it's fascinating nonetheless.
So there's this woman who like lives in Julie's apartment building who is like sleeping with like random men, and the other residents of the building like want to kick her out, but Julie's kind of like whatever, and doesn't sign the petition, and so she's allowed to stay. And then they that kind of by accident leads to a friendship developing between them, unintentionally on Julie's part, and it's interesting because she's also like an exotic dancer or something, and I don't know, their kind of relationship. It's somewhat nebulous, but it adds kind of an interesting like dimension to the movie and to her character.
And it kind of shows like the ideas that all the films sort of champion sort of bleed into each other at times, because there is kind of like these movies as a complete whole, somewhat, especially like at the end of, we're gonna say that at the end of Red. Oh yeah. And so we sort of like see sort of bits of like equality bleed into this movie, as like there's sort of like the idea of like her as like this exotic dancer and someone of a promiscuous character is treated differently from everyone else in the movie. She's sort of ostracized from society. Yeah. In the film, and just like through like the freedom to do that, she has been ostracized from society. Like there is freedom from government, but not freedom from society.
And then, like, by the way of like, you know, participating in exotic dancing, it's sort of a liberty from that social isolation, almost.
Yeah.
So.
I will also say this movie is one of the most like striking and kind of realistic like depictions of like depression and loss that I've ever seen in a movie.
It is like it's like a really great like trauma movie, a great sort of like depression movie, and like I do think like the Juliette Binoche character is the best singular character of all these films.
Yes. Maybe with a close second to Valentine.
Oh, I like Valentine too. And Carol was just absurd, and I kind of like that. But.
Well, yeah. I think we'll get a bit of a distinction here, because this isn't my favorite of the movies, but I think it's the best one. It has a very like a real like clarity of purpose around it, not that the others like don't have clarity, but the other two are like a little bit more nebulous in a way that
Yeah, that's
that
what I
this
was
one
about to
isn't.
say. Like, we're gonna get. I think especially with like Red,
Mm.
we're gonna get into that. But like, this is like the most like concretely tied to like these ideas. Whereas like in the other two, like sometimes Kieślowski kind of just goes off on these like pseudo humanist like ideas of person, which is fascinating, but not that doesn't quite provide as great cinema.
Mm.
Right. Yeah. I thought Blue was the best one, with Red being a close second.
Yeah.
But I was a little dissatisfied with the ending of Blue, and I had to go online and sort of read about it, and I was like, "Oh, that makes sense," but it was very unclear.
What was that? What did you read about the ending of Blue?
The ending was. It seemed like it viewed that the final sequence of events showed the various characters and how Julie affected them after, after the movie, and then it shows Juliet crying, and then it made a note. That's the second time she cried in the full movie, and I suppose after reading that, it's like, okay, I buy that, but as like a point is like, if you want to drive home, this like, is this something? I don't think that it quite hit the spot. So I was a little dissatisfied with it. I liked the whole movie up until that final sequence, and then
it does.
What do you think of the ending, Tyler?
It does feel maybe a little abrupt because like the I kind of view like the final like kind of event of the movie is like her giving her old house where she lived with her husband like to her husband's pregnant mistress, which is so interesting. I don't know that kind of ending montage. Like this time when I watched it, I was kind of like, oh wait, is this the end of the movie?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's fine. It is interesting, like to kind of end on a shot of her like crying, like actually feeling something, like kind of for the first time, like since the beginning of the movie, like she's kind of just been in a state of numbness the whole time.
Oh yeah, and that's I think part of why it's a great depression movie because it's not like melodramatic, like she's always crying or
Right.
like terrified or something like that. There's kind of like a numbness. There's like a distance she has to like everything around her.
Yeah. So I think that's great. But I don't know. I like it. It's not my favorite of the three, but I do kind of think it's the most well crafted, and
I think it has the most striking visuals of all of them.
it does, yes.
I think like the opening scene is just like the showstopper of cinematography.
Yeah, it's suffused with beauty and the color blue and everything. So yeah, it's a gorgeous movie. I like it a lot. Any closing thoughts on Blue?
It's magnificent. I think it has one of like the great depictions of depression and sort of solitude. I think like it's like we said earlier, it's like it's tied to closest like the revolutionary French ideas that these movies play with, and I think it has the best character of them all. So I'm sort of like, it's not the one I'd watch first, but I think it is the one like I do think it's like it is the finest crafted.
Yeah.
I'm sort of with y'all on that.
I think especially with and we'll see this in other movies as well, is that Kieślowski has a very big interest in showing his protagonist on like how it changed to like learn of these ideals, I suppose. And Julie by far had the more dynamic showing of sort of accepting these. This is a very long shot, but
All right, well,
but that's sort of confusing. Okay, good.
All right,
Are
so
we ready to talk
let's
about?
move on to White.
I think on like just like a pure entertainment level, I think I enjoy this one the most.
It is by far the most like
comedy,
straightforwardly entertaining.
Yeah. So it starts off with a Polish man is getting divorced from his French wife because he has erectile dysfunction. And like his ex-wife is just bitterly cruel to him. She takes like all his money and all his belongings, like because he was like a hairdresser. Like he stays the night in her like little hairdresser store because he just has nowhere else to go. And so she sets the curtains on fires and said, "I'll call the police on you."
So this movie follows Karol, a Polish national. living in France. Anyway, he is kind of rendered just penniless by these divorce proceedings, and he wants to get back to Poland, but he's lost his passport, he's lost all his money, until he meets a fellow Polish citizen in the train station.
Yes.
And is smuggled back into Poland by hiding in his suitcase, which is stolen by airport staff and driven up a hill. And then they open it, and we get one of the all-time great lines: "Fuck, it's a guy."
And then
that's
one of my
fun.
other, made in Russia.
Anyway, and then kind of the rest of the movie follows him as he kind of reacclimates to life in Poland, pulls off a money-making scheme, and then becomes more and more successful until he decides to pull an elaborate revenge scheme on his wife by faking his own death and framing her for his murder.
Yeah, it is both, on one hand, a, like, revenge story, and on the other hand, a meditation on, like, post-communist Poland, which is fascinating. So, okay, this one deals with égalité, equality. And, like, the French Revolutionary, like, idea of this was, like, to go back to, like, that caste system. This would be a case of, like, you are not, like, tied by, like, the land you were born on, or the name you have, or the skin color you have, or the gender you are. Like, in theory, like, revolutionary France was about, like, creating a sort of, and this is before Marx, but sort of classless society. And this is, like, and, like, Marx would later go on and take this further, but this is a case where it's, like, what you are born as does not define of what you become as a man or a woman. The film's way of doing that is, like, showing us, like, this world of post-communist Poland, where, like, we constantly get, like, the images of sort of, like, corrupt capitalism, and how, like, oh, you can buy anything, which is, like, a really popular thing a popular idea in post-communist nations. Like, oh, you can get anything. Like, this is awesome. You can even get dead bodies. It's great. And, like, the film, like, whenever we get, like, images of Warsaw, like, there is this building that they always show. It's called I believe it's called the Palace of Culture and Science. It was a gift from the Soviet Union to Poland, and, like, it's built in, like, the typical, like, Stalinist, like, massive neoclassical style. Like, there's, like, 7 of these things, and literally 7 of these things.
The Seven Sisters.
Yeah.
The Seven Sisters,
and, like, they're, like, these, like, old, like, these gargantuan, grotesque neoclassical skyscrapers that just sort of tower over Warsaw. And in that case, it's Moscow. It's only one in Warsaw. And, like, that building is always in the shot, sort of towering over it. And, like, I think at one point, like when they enact, like, the revenge plot, and he's talking to the man who smuggled him into the country, who's now a business partner.
Yeah.
Like, I think we're talking at that building, I believe, or at least it looks like that building.
Yeah, so it's strange. They filter this idea, like, of equality through, like, a weirdly, like, Coen-esque, like, black comic crime revenge, like, comedy.
Sort of, like, the idea of, like, kind of crony capitalism is a joke in the movie.
Well, like, he pulls off, like, his kind of money-making scheme by, like, buying up land from, like, farmers that his employers are planning to buy at, like, low prices, and then
IKEA,
right, and then flip it by selling it to, like, big corporations. So he buys the land first and, like, demands, like, 10 times what he paid for it from them.
And then he goes on, like, to start a business, and then he wears giant fluffy jackets and slicks back his hair.
Yeah, I like this movie. It is kind of like the least well regarded of the 3. Like, Blue and Red both have 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and this one has, like, a 90%, which is a little weird.
Well, like, I think my issues with it stem from, like, the revenge plot of it, because I'm like, oh dearie, because, like, Carol's then goes from, like, oh, he's been fucked over and now he's trying to get his life back to better, straight to, oh, you're kind of a psychopath. Like, he uses this revenge plot to end his impotence. That's just so strange.
Well, it is a little weird and maybe a little troubling, but I don't think Kieślowski is in endorsing this at all.
Oh, no, I don't think that's... this is not like a damning of a Kieślowski. This is just like a strange thing watching it.
Yeah.
It's like the movie does just do like a 180-degree turn when like the revenge plot starts.
Yeah, it is kind of entertaining because of like seeing
Oh,
all the steps he goes through to like fake his own death.
And like, I do think like one of the best scenes in the movie is like they rent the dead body from. It's a Russian import.
You could really buy anything.
Yeah. Side note, like if you want if you want more of an exploration on like this idea of you can buy anything, there's like a short little Vice documentary called like How to Buy a Nuke on the Black Market, which is sort of phrased as like, hey, you can get a fucking nuclear warhead on the black market. A guy buried one in his mother's garden in Bulgaria.
Oh yeah.
But then it kind of turns into like this fascinating, like musing on like post-communist culture in Bulgaria and how like in the absence of like state-run economy, it's just become like this wild capitalist utopia where it's like you can buy anything, fuck it, women, bodies, anything, fuck it, warhead, sure, we'll get you anything. Is like in like the black market of like these post-communist nations. So, like, yeah, if you want more of those ideas, that's a good place to start.
It's a frightening place to start, but a good place.
It's terrifying, but also really funny.
Yes.
Reed, what are your thoughts on Trois Couleurs Blanc?
This was my least favorite of the three.
Okay.
I will have to say. I don't know. The revenge plot is... I mean, it's a good vehicle for his arc, but it's like, did you?
Like, I do start to lose interest once like the revenge plot kicks because it kind of stops becoming about like post-communist Poland, and I'm like, oh, I'm not interested in this.
Once Carol dresses up as Michael Keaton
businessman
as a young Sheldon Adelson, I just start to lose interest.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not as much of like a European history buff as you guys are, so all that kind of post-communist society stuff kind of like goes over my head a little bit. But I mean, certainly I can tell it's there, but like I'm not like as quick to pick up on it. I don't know. I do really enjoy this movie. I think the revenge plot is kind of a lot of fun. It is probably the least of the three, but I would never say it's like not a great piece of cinema.
Like I still love this movie. Like this is still like a great like art piece on like your both like this man's impotence and Europeans and like post EU European culture. And also, like, think about how hard it is to get like pure white like into like every frame of a movie and how like the movie's always like it's always winter in Poland. And like there's always like little melted snow on the ground. Yeah, so he does a very good job like suffusing this movie with the color white almost as much as blue and red are suffused with those colors. Which is very difficult. That's something to be appreciated. So I still like this movie. I think you're probably right in that, Reed, in that like it's probably the least of the three. But I just think it's also like the most entertaining of the three. Yeah, and it's a very strange like diversion to take, like coming off of Blue. Like you're like if you watch Blue and you're like, okay, is this what these movies are going to be? And then you watch White and you're like, oh, nope, not at all.
I was left with one question, and I was kind of disappointed by me asking this. Because in Blue, there is a nice scene where Julie is in front of the fire and then she throws something into it. So it's a good set piece, utilization. Mm-hmm. This one, I was sort of expecting the same thing. So he gets a job as a security guard, then he's handed a gun with tear gas. Yeah. Is that right? Yeah. Tear gas? Yeah, or at least they say it's tear gas. Okay. And then Carol goes to meet this man who ends up being the guy that smuggled him into Poland. And he says, "You have to." Yes, the man is kill me. Does this change anything? And then he pulls out a gun, and then I'm expecting tear gas to just shoot him with tear gas, but it was just a blank. Well, I looked at it and I saw I think he pulls out a different gun than what the other man gave him. So I was like, oh, this is.
Because I thought the moment he pulls out the gun, I'm like, oh no, are we going to get like some like black comedy? Like he tries to kill him, but he just coats him with tear gas.
But no.
That's what I was thinking. But it's like, oh man, but then that didn't happen. And then I'm like,
Wow.
I wanted black comedy tear gas to the face.
I still like what happens there. He like
that's a fascinating scene.
Yeah, he like shoots a blank at him.
It is still fascinating because I thought he was dead, and it's like it's just a blank.
And then there's the lovely scene where they go ice skating on. They go out onto the frozen like river, and like there's a bunch of people like fishing in the background.
Yeah,
I feel like a child.
That's a wonderful follow-up.
Yeah.
I really love this movie.
Tyler, if you were ever bored of ideas and trying to diffuse tension in a piece of film, skating across frozen lakes, great device.
I'll do my best, but
of course they have to have the imposing palace of culture and science in the background.
Yeah. All right, let's move on then to the finale of the trilogy, Red.
Out of all like the Enlightenment-era revolutionary French terms, I think brotherhood, fraternité, is probably the most nebulous because and it's also kind of somewhat contradictory to the others because like those others are about like not being bound to land or society or the state, whereas brotherhood in like sort of like a nation building sense is all about like we share the same land, we share the same tongue, we share the same culture, we are bound to each other. Like we have obligations to each other. That's often sort of like the ideological foundation of the welfare state.
This movie probably plays it very loose with brotherhood.
Yeah. Because like
much looser definitions, sort of saying, hey, we are there for one another. Sort of that sort of sense of nationalism.
Well, it's not even really nationalism. It kind of goes on to like this like broad sort of like we as the human race are irrevocably bound to each other, and like the actions we take affect everyone, whether we like that or not. And it shows like a kind of like anxiety about the idea of like everyone being bound together.
Yeah. Well, John, it's interesting you say that like fraternity is like the most kind of nebulous of the concepts because I think this is probably the most nebulous of the three movies.
Yes.
And I will say this. I don't think it's the best. I think that's Blue, but this one is, I think, my favorite of the trilogy.
Oh, I think this one has like some like really fascinating scenes. But I think it's my least favorite because I don't think it's quite as like successful as Blue or as just like wryly entertaining as White. But I still like this is still like a fascinating, really great, wonderfully crafted movie.
Yeah. Well. My thing with it is, like, I don't know, I just get, like, the characters in it, I think, are, like, maybe, like, the most accessible and likable out of the movies.
I think there's some of the most, like, fleshed out.
Yeah.
Like, there are just, like, this is one of the few movies that just has, like, a normal scene where, like, two people just talk to each other and they sort of elaborate like the ideas kicking around the movie.
Yeah. I mean, Valentine like feels like a fully formed like person, and she's just a great character, and that performance is so interesting. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't really know why this one is my favorite and why I like it so much. I don't know. It's just very charming. It has a lot of kind of just interesting kind of threads going on. I really like the
judge.
Yeah, I really like the through line of it, and that retired judge that she meets who's like eavesdropping on people's conversations, like by
and then will like sort of say like, why don't you stop me? Why don't you do that? Like, why did you save my dog?
Yeah.
And, like ideas of self and self-worth and like those, and I think those moments are priceless.
Hmm.
And that sort of relationship between the judge and Valentine sort of makes me think that that's sort of what the sense of brotherhood is mainly about. Like whatever sense Kieślowski is trying to derive brotherhood from comes from the interaction between the judge and Valentine.
Yeah, but like there's also like that great anxiety about it. Like this movie ends with a giant storm and a ferry crashing with like everyone dying except all the characters in the Three Colors trilogy.
Yeah. Well, that is rather strange, but this movie is like about like people from like different walks of life kind of coming together unexpectedly and forming like a really strong bond. And I don't know, to me there's just something really, really poignant in that. And
Oh, sure.
I love the idea of like kind of how everybody's actions like impact everybody else. Like there's a lot of that kind of aspect. Like she kind of there's one point where he's like he thinks like one of his neighbors like controls the heroin trade in the country, and she calls him and is like, you deserve to die, because like her brother is a heroin addict, which is so interesting. And also you get that like weird like parallel story, which is like oddly similar to like what happened to the judge in his youth, you find out.
Yeah.
Also just like this movie, the use of the color red in this movie, I think, I don't know, might be like my favorite like of these movies, like use of color. Like it's just permeates like every frame, and I just love it.
Like blown up poster where it's like the glowing red background.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I just love this movie, and I recognize that it's not as perfectly crafted as Blue, but I think it's got some fascinating like things to say like about society. And also the cinematography in this one is so interesting, because you get some like great shots where it'll like they must have had it like on a jib or something. It'll like move really fast, like up or down, like kind of moving into a POV shot or like a weird like low angle shot.
It's not like my book fell down there and we just go.
Yes, I love that.
And like there's also like I think there's also like an interesting use of like mirrors in the movie, if I remember.
Yeah, they talked a lot about mirrors and also use mirrors. Yes.
This is still like a wonderfully crafted piece of cinema, Tyler. Like you don't need to say like, "Oh, I don't know why I like this."
Yeah, it's a beautiful movie.
I just think like because it's like so nebulous at times, I just do like I kind of find it like hard to like attach to it as much as like say like Blue, especially, or even White. Though also like this still has European history in it. The setting of the movie, it's Switzerland, which is always kind of like this apex of culture, which doesn't really have a language all that much. It kind of like some parts of the country speak German, the parts we're in speaks French.
Yeah,
it's not really a part of Europe, but it's still like a part of it's not part of the European Union, but it's part of the Schengen area. So it's irrevocably tied to European culture and like the European ideal. And I think like that's. And I think Kieślowski chose that intentionally as like this setting for a place where like everyone is like both like in their own spheres of influence, but also irrevocably tied to everyone else. That's my nebulous historical
take on Red.
Gotcha. This is what these movies are for.
I totally fucking missed Switzerland. I thought it was Paris.
No,
and then like jump cut to like Switzerland. Like, oh, Switzerland. Why are they showing Switzerland? Okay, whatever.
It's set in Geneva, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Geneva.
Fuck.
Yeah, like. But hey, like if I can't talk about like the history of Europe and the socio-political ideas of a film about nebulous Enlightenment-era like terms, then what am I here for? So you guys want to finish up on Rouge?
I guess I have two things. One, I do have to admire one of the last shots where it's a frozen image on the judge's TV that basically mirrors the giant poster out on the street.
Yes.
And I thought that was very amusing. Yeah. And then two, while I think Valentine is a bit more of is a more nebulous character than Julie, I really like how she is a character that is in an industry so demeaning, but yet she has a very potent sense of agency. And that sort of contrast is very nice to see.
It's
especially
nice.
In a female.
It's nice to see a fashion model character in a movie who like isn't a like vapid like self-obsessed
and
narcissist.
It's not about like the horrors of this industry all the time.
No, it's perfectly fine. It's just a job.
It's
it's just a job. There are much more important things.
A human being. Who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew?
So we like these movies. I think it's fair to say.
We really love these movies.
There's quite a bit of ass, but yeah.
Oh well, yes, you do get a bit of U.M.A. in this movie. Unexpected male ass.
Yeah.
I feel bad for Uma Thurman now.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. I've been using that term for like the last few years, and I never even thought of that. We
just caroled off the rails.
What an ignoble way to close out our discussion of 3 of the most beautiful movies ever made.
This is this podcast in a nutshell. I will talk about like the historical terms of freedom, equality, and brotherhood to like frame these like cinematic artwork films, but then we're just gonna end on male ass, and I think that's just the perfect thing for this podcast.
It could be worse. It could be worse.
It couldn't be worse.
Oh,
but I like your optimism.
It could be worse.
You want me to make it worse? Because I don't want to make it worse.
Don't make it worse, please.
Okay.
I guess that will fall to me. Hey, at least there were no dongs in blue.
Fuck you. That's what I was gonna say.
The opportunity presented itself too nicely. I had to. Anyway, so the Three Colors trilogy, beautiful existential musings on French ideals and European society. There's no other movies quite like them, and I love them. I'm going to buy them on Criterion.
Bankrupt yourself doing so.
Hey, I have a gift card this time.
Okay.
Anyway, that closes out the Three Colors trilogy. Now, for next time, do we want to continue riding the Kieślowski train? Because there are a couple other movies of his that I want to watch, if we're interested.
Okay. What's on the menu?
Okay, so he did a movie called Blind Chance, which I'm interested in seeing. He also made another movie called The Double Life of Veronique. Of course, there's also the Decalogue, although that is a 10-hour miniseries, which I'm not sure we have time to tackle right now.
Yeah.
Shall we do Blind Chance and The Double Life of Veronique?
Because I'm uncultured and have no idea what his other movies are. Sure.
All right. Also, apparently, Kieślowski retired following the release of Red. He said that was going to be his final film, but actually, when he passed away, he was working on a new trilogy of movies called Heaven, Hell, and Purgatory, which is a shame. We'll never get to see what his version of that would have been. But
the span in threes.
Yes. But anyway, all right, more Kieślowski coming your way next week.
I'm excited.
I am also excited. I've been waiting for a while to have the chance to watch these. So, all right, goodbye, everyone. Thank you for tuning in once more and putting up with our bullshit.
Au revoir, mon amis.
Oh, I meant to do the intro to the show in French, but I completely forgot.
You actually wrote down a French intro.
Well, I didn't write it down, but I had it in my head. I know what Bienvenue à l'Acclaimed show. All right. Maybe it's a good thing I didn't do that. Okay, goodbye, everyone.
I would have to, go to Scotland and, interview someone about movies.
You wouldn't have to do that, but...
Reed, what are you doing? What is this?
I'm making things right, John. I'm making things right.
Why are you making things right? What is
this? Just go on. It sounds like you're talking about agrarian fascism. Oh, wait, Canada. That's right. Happy Canada Day. Happy 150th Canada.
Oh, yeah. Happy 150th Canada.
Well, okay. Yes. That's great. This episode is going to be out way too late to to actually be on time for that, but good thought.
Oops.
And oh god, puppy dog.